It's the horror story Tea Party Republicans love to tell over and over again. The tale of scary President Obama and his terrible, horrible, no good, very bad stimulus.
Spending in Washington is one of the things that concerns them most about our future.
That's enough of out-of-control spending.
It was a disaster, Mr. President, an absolute disaster.
Every time he goes to identify a bridge or another project that is yet not funded and is in disrepair, he's going to remind people that it's his stimulus that was unable to.
But a new Newsweek investigation reveals these Tea Party hypocrites have been talking out of both sides of their mouths, ripping spending in public while quietly begging for pork behind the scenes. Take House Majority Leader Eric Cantor. Here's what he thought about the stimulus 2 years ago.
Over the last 50 days, we have passed a stimulus bill, we have passed the omnibus spending bill, and it is striking to see the lack of change in that bill. The type of waste and pork barrel spending, the earmarks that exist in that bill, you've got that train from Disneyland to Las Vegas.
Maybe he wouldn't have criticized that rail project quite so much if it had gone from Disneyland to Richmond, Virginia, instead of Las Vegas. Because just 7 months after blasting that project, he signed this letter begging the Department of Transportation for money for high-speed rail back in his home state. Joining me now is former Democratic Congressman Alan Grayson of Florida and Dan Stone, White House correspondent for Newsweek and the Daily Beast, who broke the story. Thank both of you for being here.
Good evening.
Congressman, you voted for the stimulus. These guys attacked it in public. What do you say about this? I mean, they used your vote for stimulus against you.
Well, that's right, and many others. But the fact is that over 100 of them have taken credit for things that are in the stimulus bill after they voted against it, which is the height of hypocrisy. In fact, over and over again, what you see is that they complain in public, but then they tell the public that all the good things that come out of it are things that somehow they created. I'll give you some more examples, if you like. Rick Perry, he took $17 billion from that one bill, and now he depicts a champion against government spending. Michelle Bachmann, another example. Michelle Bachmann, her own family has received $250,000 in federal subsidies.
Yeah.
That's $250,000 for one family.
Now,
and there are other examples. Ron Paul usually is above this sort of thing, but he begged for federal money so that they could build high-speed rail in Texas.
Now, Dan, you broke the story and have documented letters. How did they get away with this? I mean, when Cantor was asked about the inconsistency, he says, and I'm quoting, how he supported the rail project in Richmond after slamming the rail project from Disneyland to Las Vegas. He says, if there's one thing I think all of us here on both sides of the political aisle from all parts of the region agree with, is that we need to do all we can to promote jobs here in the Richmond area. So let me get this right. We don't care about other areas. He can be for stimulus at home, and it becomes something that is so wrong and ill thought out around the country. How do they get away with this, Dan?
Well, Reverend, this is the politics of pork, really, and it's not pork unless it's in your someone else's district. So if you're supporting a project, a bridge or a walkway or an airport retrofit, which is what we found with a lot of these letters, it's only job supporting and job creating and helpful and not pork barrel government spending if it's in your district. So a lot of these members of Congress, many of them are from the Tea Party caucus, fiscal conservatives, they all write these letters. We illuminated about 12 in the story, but we got about 50 of them from different members who have made these funding requests to different executive branch departments looking for this sort of money.
Now, Congressman Grayson, let me go to another Tea Party, Representative Allen West. Allen West is Congressman-elect, talking about how he wanted to get away from debt and deficits on January 3rd. Let me play you what he said.
I think it's so important that we get away from, this exorbitant debt that we have, this deficit spending, so that we can present ourselves as fiscally strong in this country.
But now, Now, Allen West requests money for pet projects. Quote, I'm quoting from an article, he has already written 4 letters seeking tax dollars for pet projects in his district in his first 10 months on the job. I think, Dan, the thing that is most revealing about your article is not whether one agrees with stimulus or not, but the hypocrisy, the blatant contradiction in campaigning and crusading, saying one thing, and then actually begging for exactly what you're crusading against.
Right. A lot of these projects, these are pet projects, and this is what representative democracy is, to send a member of Congress to get a piece of the pie to bring back home. The problem, like you said, is that a lot of these members go out and say exactly this is the problem. Someone else's district, someone else's pet pork barrel project is the problem. What we illuminated here is that every member of Congress does it, even those who rail against it.
Now, Congressman Grayson, but I mean, that's representative democracy, but it's also representative hypocrisy. Because you have to run against this, you were attacked for this, and they're running around trying to collect after condemning people like you.
Well, that's right. In fact, for the Republicans, it's trick or treat every single day. They try to trick the public into thinking that they're against federal spending, but they still take all the treats. That's what you see time after time. In fact, I think that their version of the Lord's Prayer is something like, please deliver me from temptation next time.
Well, that's a good line. Let me ask you this, Dan. When you look at the spokesman for Mr. Cantor, now this one made me go back twice. They say on how he supported the rail system being built in Richmond and not Vegas. Quote, the Vegas rail line is essentially an $8 billion earmark. The Richmond rail has bipartisan support and was a far different animal. So help me out here. This is the map where the rail lines all over the country would have been linking people, which would have linked commerce, would have provided jobs all over the country. But that is earmark. But if it's home and he claims bipartisan, all of a sudden an earmark is not an earmark anymore. How does that work?
It's important to remember that a lot of these projects are similar, but they're not the same. So what Congressman Cantor's spokesperson told me was essentially the line from Disneyland to Las Vegas was a very frivolous project. Not a lot of research had been done, and it wasn't shown that it would be popular or even lucrative. Whereas in the other side of the country, in Richmond to Washington, D.C., that was a line that would work much better. He's drawing a very, very distinct distinction, but it gets back to that point where if it's local and it's my project, it's all right. If it's elsewhere, my taxpayers in my district shouldn't have to pay for it.
Grayson, will the Democrats be able to show this contradiction as the Congress is up next year during the re-election of the president?
Yes, the public understands hypocrisy above all. That's the one thing that both sides seem to agree on. If you talk the talk, you've got to walk the walk. That's the problem that Mitt Romney's having right now. It's a little hard to tease out his forms of hypocrisy because he's on both sides of every issue. Well, in the case of Herman Cain, I guess.
Thank you.
Right.
I've got to go, but thank both of you, Congressman Grayson and Dan Stone. Thank you for showing us the trick, Dan, showing us where we're not getting the treat. We'll be right back.